This evening, our Pam Burkhart is here to share information with the board and the people who are attending the meeting this evening on sequestration and will provide detailed information.
We'll do that as soon as we get I'm here. I think that all of you received some backup in your board bulletin today, a couple of articles. You may not have had an opportunity to look at them yet. Right? Okay. We had a request for this to review this particular information. And for all of you, in case you don't remember who I am, since I haven't been here for a day or two, I'm Pam Burkhart, and I do the federal and state programs here at the district. So what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about sequestration. We're going to talk about what it is, how did we get to this thing called sequestration, what the impact will be specifically on education and our district in particular, and very briefly about how it might affect the rest of the nation, because if we get to that point, it's going to have quite a dramatic effect. Then there are a few little talking points, and then there will be some availability of resources in the event that any of the board members would like to contact any of our representatives to let them know how you might feel about this taking place. What is sequestration? It's a big word. When you look it up in the dictionary, it's interesting because it says gathering up of money in one of the definitions, and that's exactly what they're planning to do. In this case, it's going to be automatic, across-the-board cuts of federal spending designed to reduce the deficit over a period of 10 years. And the deficit's quite large, so they're going to take quite a lot of money. The cuts will begin to take effect on January 2nd of next year, 2013, although they may not affect all federal aid to education programs until July 1st, when we get our funding for the 13-14 school year. It impacts almost every aspect of the federal budget with just a few exceptions. How did we get here? Some of you, or maybe all of you, know about this. Beginning in the summer of 2011, there was a lot of debate in Washington, D.C. by the Congress and the administration regarding whether they should raise the debt ceiling another time or not. During the course of the debate and the discussions, they decided that, okay, we'll raise the debt ceiling, but in order for us to do that, you're going to have to agree to have a Budget Control Act which says we're going to establish a commission that consisted of 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans from each of the houses of Congress. So 6 of each for a total of 12. And they're going to decide how we're going to reduce our federal spending to take this debt ceiling down, to take our spending down. What happened was the commission they did make a recommendation. However, neither the Congress nor the administration agreed to all aspects of that recommendation, and therefore it was not adopted. The other element or component, if you want to call it that they wrote into the Budget Control Act was this: if this commission does not present a plan that both Congress and the administration can agree to and put into effect, there is going to be a sequestration of federal funds that will take place in January of 2013. So that's kind of a little bit of background about how we got to the place that we are now. Any questions about that particular aspect? Or most people know about it, I'm sure. What the impact to education could mean real mid-year cuts in some cases, which means funding that people already think that they're going to get, they may not be receiving as of January 2013. What I have heard as a recommendation of strategy to avoid this is spend as much money as you can early on, because they can't take something you've already spent, which is an interesting strategy but might not be very effective if you don't need to spend it until after January. The cuts to the Department of Education could be between 3.5 and 4.1 billion, not million, billion dollars in 1 year. So that's quite significant. It's going to impact all grants with the exception, or all education programs with the exception of Pell Grants. So it will affect every single federal grant that we have in our district and many that we don't have. And once again, some of the cuts could come as early as January. Most of them, particularly some programs like Title I and IDEA that are forward funded, and I can explain that a little later, won't be until we know what next year's funding allocation is. Okay, Scott, thanks. So this is what it's going to look like for 1 year at a 7.8% reduction. The reductions are the prospect of the reduction, and the estimates are ranging from 7.8 to 9.2. We don't know where they're going to come in. It's just going to depend upon how much money they need to collect and who they decide that they might not want to cut quite as severely. 7.8 was the first estimate that came out, and really education has not revised that yet. Although they're telling us now it might be closer to 8.2 if you listen to some of the pundits. Title I, it will be a 1 year, $1.1 billion reduction. IDEA, $978 million. The Perkins loans, $138 million. Head Start, $590 million. And it could be that they will determine that they're going to eliminate in their entirety some grants. So they could just say, we're not going to fund these grants at all. The important thing to remember about this is it's a 10-year austerity program to reduce our debt, which means this is what we're going to look at in the first year. We don't know what it will look like in years beyond the first year. So that's an important thing to think about. For our own district, taking into consideration that the people in the Title I organizations that I follow and many other groups are now saying 8.2 instead of 7.8. So I updated my calculations for what might happen here in our own district to reflect an 8.2 reduction. So for Title I, it will be $429,000 plus, almost $500,000. For Title II, it'll be a little over $47,000. For Title III, a little over $33,000. For IDEA Basic, $115,000 plus. That total is $625,000. And then there are a couple of other programs, or some other programs that it might affect. So I kind of bunched all of some of our smaller grants together, and I said, okay, let's apply this 8.2 to those grants. That would be an additional $17,600. Our district has bought some Build America bonds, and you folks may remember something about that. As an incentive to buy Build America bonds, the federal government gives us a rebate or a subsidy of some kind, and we get it on an annual basis. Semi-annual, Scott says. And we are using it to help pay down our bonds. If this goes into effect, Scott has been notified that that subsidy could also go away. And that's $90,000 a year, Scott?
And that's based on bonds that we've already sold.
Yes.
Okay. So the total for our district in one fell swoop could be in excess of $700,000 in the first year, which is a loss of a great deal of money and positions and infrastructure and other things that we're doing to support education in our district. So it's a serious matter. The interesting thing is, and even equally as frightening, is that it's not just education. It's every agency and department at the federal level, including the Department of Defense. So you can look at that list and you can say to yourself, if they're taking this kind of a cut out of every agency, it's going to severely impact our economy. I read a report, and I have this report. If any of you guys really want to read it, I'll send it to you. It was done by Stephen Fuller, who is a doctor, Dr. Stephen Fuller at George Mason University, and some other folks at the university. One of the things that they did was estimate the impact if sequestration occurs across the board, the impact to the country as a whole. And what they found from their research was that it would reduce our gross domestic product by $215 billion. It would decrease personal earnings of the workforce by $109 billion, and it would cost the United States economy or workers 2.14 million jobs. So this is serious business, and I think, you know, all of us are probably beginning to hear or have been hearing on the news reports the fiscal cliff issues, and they're talking about what are we going to do about this fiscal cliff. This is what they're talking about, because if we step over this, we're going to be in real trouble.
And that's actually just part of the fiscal cliff. I think it looks like this is only an economic impact of the Budget Control Act, but in addition to this, just to provide some context, we have a Congress that currently is in recess until after the election.
And we're going to talk about that.
Okay. I'll let you.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. What are the challenges? And we talked a little bit about it's going to be a significant negative impact to our economy. Sequestration in itself does not target cuts to focus them where they might do the least harm. It's just an across the board, you know what, we're going to just do it to everybody. My position is, and I think the position of many people, is that we definitely need to do something about our debt. It's a problem. But sequestration is a very dire way to get it done, because it's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve. Is there hope? And I think this is what Matt was thinking about a little bit. And Matt, if I don't cover it all, please weigh in. Congress is adjourned now until after the election. They're going to come back on November 13th. They have 18 days between November 13th and the time that the current Congress is out of session and the new Congress, whomever our elected officials happen to be, are seated. In those 18 days, Congress could repeal sequestration because they made that law, so they could repeal it if they chose to. Congress and the administration could agree to a budget that would resolve the issues, but those people don't appear to be talking much back there, so I don't know that there's much hope about that.
And if I just can add a few other things that constitute the fiscal cliff
Sure.
on top of this, all of the Bush tax cuts and the Obama tax cuts on payroll taxes are scheduled to expire at the end of this year. And unemployment benefits, federal unemployment benefits are scheduled to expire at the end of this year. And the federal government is probably going to hit the debt ceiling, and that's going to need to be increased this year. The farm bill that affects farmers is also expiring and has to be reauthorized by the end of the year. So all this has to be done in 8 days.
There's a huge list of things that Congress needs to attend to. I didn't put it in here, but yes. You're quite right, Mr. Jewett. There is a huge list of things that need to get done. And it's going to be a lame duck Congress that's going to be attempting to get it done. They need to talk about funding for the upcoming year. We're working on a continuing resolution now. They haven't resolved what they're spending today, and they need to talk about that. They need to do something about our deficit. Part of the problem here is differences in political opinions, positions, etc. And there's a very conservative group on one side and a more liberal group on the other side, and depending upon where you stand determines what you think might need to happen. It's really frightening. It is really frightening that we've allowed ourselves to get to the place we're at because we're out of time. We're out of time. From when I look at all of this, the only thing that I think the Congress will have time to do about sequestration in the short time that they have when they come back is they are either going to have to change the effective date of sequestration or they're going to have to take it out of the law. I don't think they have time to figure out what to do. They only have time to make it not happen. And other people may have different opinions, but I don't know that much else can happen. So, what can we do? All of the alphabet soups that all of us are exposed to all of the time are banding together, and they're really putting pressure on our congressmen, on the administration, on anybody that will listen, having to do with, you've got to stop this because we can't have it happen. Our country is going to be in severe trouble if we do. And so, we prepare for the best and prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And if you're so inclined and you would like to contact anybody, I do have information that will allow you to do that if you don't have other avenues. I've got some things from ASA, and I've got a contact list of all of our representatives and our senators, so you can contact them. I have a letter that's a sample letter. I have a little email, kind of an invoice thing you can send to them. I don't know, I don't know how much good any one individual can do, but certainly school boards can let them know that what the impact can be. Different organizations have surveyed school boards around the country, and almost 90% said they can't replace the funds. And so what the Department of Education in Washington is saying is it will result in the immediate layoff of probably 15,000 teachers nationwide at minimum, and probably much closer to 100,000 by the end of the year. It will cause lots of programs to go by the wayside. Just lots of very serious impact.
Well, you'll be glad to know that I'm part of a team of school board members that will be going to DC in January, not just from Arizona, but from across the nation. And this is one of the issues we're lobbying against in DC. And are you going to the National School Board? Yes.
Their annual, yeah, I've been to that, and that's really a great conference. I'm hoping that the Arizona School Boards Association is doing some things before January, because if it's going to be, we might be behind the 8 ball.
I mean, there's a number of things that we can do individually. I know Janice sent out information on taking action. Yeah. But what I think would probably be a stronger statement would be for the board to do something. So I think it might be appropriate to discuss a board resolution at our next board meeting, talk about that language, and address it to our representatives and senators.
I agree, and I know we can't take action tonight. it's not on our agenda to do so, but group writing is always interesting and fun. So I think it helps us to have a
We'll settle down this side of stuff.
yeah, for us to have something to work off of. So maybe we could have board members send to Dr. Boyle their things that they might want incorporated in it. Would that be the best way? And then to have someone from administration present us with something.
And did you say you have a letter?
I do, and you can use that, and I'm sure that if the School Boards Association sent something out, you can kind of use that, and then I think that you want to make it personally felt, though. I think that particularly at this time, when you talk, when you're relaying how it's going to affect our district, you need to say what that means. Because if we lose that kind of money in Title I, that's going to be painful.
Yeah,
It's going to be very painful.
Not just for the board's like information, but our public, just based on our student population, like this affects us much more negatively than
Yes, it does.
other school districts.
It does. There are a number of people sitting in this room who are at least in part or wholly funded by federal dollars. And if we have these significant kinds of cuts, you know, what you look at is how do you keep it away from the students? But there have to be people that are running, that are doing the things that you have to do when you receive the money. So it's going to be very problematic. It's just really frightening. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how it is that we allowed it to happen, but we.
Pam, do you have an electronic copy of that letter?
Yes, I do.
So if you could forward that on to
Yes.
Hilda, she
Yes.
could provide that to the governing board.
Some of leadership had asked for it as well, and it was taken down for updating, and so I now have the updated copy, and I'll make sure that all of you get it. So I'll send it to Hilda, and she can take care of it. And that's kind of the end of my little presentation. It's not a happy thought, but it's serious.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Governing board? Okay. Our next item here is future agenda items. I know we already discussed bringing this issue up on October 30th. I also think that we should probably put some placeholders in here for November and December with our legislative and political updates that we normally have. This way the board can start discussing openly pending, or I guess, planned legislation, planned bills for the next school year so that the board can try and be proactive this year. Any other future agenda items? Sure.
I shouldn't have offered.
I move the governing board adjourn.
Actually, if I can, hold on, I do have one other item that I would like to add, and that is a presentation on career ladder and where it is and where it is going and what it does. Probably, my tendency would be to put that into January when we have a couple new board members at least, but that can decide.
Any other future agenda items?
And then since Mrs. Arenas' motion is still on the floor, I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.